Do you feel involved and wanted?
I feel uncomfortable now you said that.
Jesus.
You always got to make things weird, Dan.
That was you.
I think you made it weird, Peter.
Oh, me? All right, here we go. Making it weird in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. Woo. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Listen, man, what can you say about those guys? They've got everything you can want over there at Soccer90. All the international stuff, all the domestic stuff, they've got it all, honestly. Soccer90.com. If you use the code Third Degree online or in store at checkout, which I can't believe, 20% off, code Third Degree. You can pick it up, you can have it delivered, whatever you want. Soccer90.com. They got the goods. Third Degree, the podcast, is also brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm. For wills, trusts, probates, and business law, call 469-515-2559 or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 265 of Third Degree, the podcast. Hello, it is me, Peter, alongside, first off, Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Hello, hello.
Hello to you. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer himself, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, fellas. How are y'all doing then on this lovely evening?
I'm doing better because I've not looked forward to doing this podcast episode, Buzz.
Yeah, why's that?
Well, I want to make sure I do this right. I feel like we have a responsibility,
right,
to be level-headed and fair. And I think my personal feeling is I feel like we do that. Like when things are bad, we admit it and we call people, teams out or players out or Dan Hunt or whatever it is, right?
Right.
I feel like we do that.
I think so.
But I got to tell you, I was really, and maybe I'm just being an old sissy pants old man, I was really alarmed and shocked over the reaction to the game on Saturday when I read all of these stories about people in the supporters group flipping off and cussing at the players and the coach. I mean, I know people are mad, and I certainly have booed the team, but I've never stood in the stands and cussed at my club. I found that shocking.
Oh, that's an every game occurrence for me, even in the press box.
Really?
Well, for fuck's sake, do that better. Nothing crazy. No, not like abusing somebody.
But my sense is that people. I mean, I am not a sensitive flower about this stuff. It's hard to offend me. But my sense is, based on what I read on the social media and some of the back and forth that I saw online after the game, was that it literally turned abusive. To the point where I'm told the captain of the team was sending direct messages to fans and supporter group leaders, asking them, or telling them not to do that or something really weird. Like, if it got to that point, something's gone haywire. Right? Am I wrong? Am I overreacting to all that?
A little bit, I think. People were really upset. I mean, El Jefe, who, if people don't know, is the very first fan of this club way back 2 years before it even existed. He said he was the most upset and emotional and mad that he's ever been in, 29 seasons of supporting this club. So, it's the first blown 3-goal lead in club history. So I understand people are mad. Giving the finger to a coach or cussing at players is not something I would do, but, not everybody cheers the same. So some people are really mad and, really take it seriously. And as the paying customer, I think people can express themselves however they want. I hear what you're saying, and I understand why Paul's upset. He doesn't think that it's the coach's fault, and that people shouldn't be giving the finger to the coach, but people are mad. So
Yeah, I agree with you, Buzz. Everybody's free to do whatever they want to. But I think if you're truly at your core a fan of a club, at some point you realize that what the team really needs is your support and not your anger and your anger to the point where you are literally doing something to the team that you would do to somebody that cut you off in traffic.
Yeah.
And I just found that really weird. And maybe it's a very limited number of people. I also am shocked at the number of people that are acting this way that are really relatively new fans of the club, and they haven't lived the experience that maybe the rest of us have. So maybe a lot of us are just worn down nubs.
Yeah, we're old and jaded.
Right?
I think that might be part of it, though. You know how, like, with the Reggie thing, right? The booing, the kneeling. People blew it out and said, "Oh, it was the FC Dallas fan base." It was 5 people who probably never came again, and probably never came before that. The newer people who maybe haven't been through and really necessarily understood the history and the grounding of the club, who see like an Inter Miami and an Atlanta United and that, and they're like, "Oh, that's the normal." That's not the normal for FC Dallas. Boo all you want. That's great. You pay your money. That's your right. That's your prerogative. I don't know. Abuse is a little bit much, but it seems like, unfortunately, with these times, when you mention supporters group leaders and people associated with supporters groups getting direct messages, that's who everyone just assumes it all comes from.
You mean the players assume it comes from those leaders of the supporters groups?
Yeah. I mean, years ago when George John got hit by that bottle, right?
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
That the club, the players assumed that was from a supporters group member for whatever reason. It wasn't. It was some guy that had come once, never came again.
Right.
But that sort of behavior just gets roped in with it regardless, and particularly in that area of the stadium where the supporters groups don't have control over who goes into that section, because it's the cheap seats, it's the easiest accessible beer, so it's a lot of people who really have no interest in contributing to the atmosphere, to the support of the team, that just happen to be there. And these guys shit the bed and lost a 3-goal lead. Yeah, I'm going to give them some shit as they come off the pitch.
Well, that's probably all well and good. Maybe my impression was that it got a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more confrontational directly with the players. And part of me thinks, well, you know what, at least somebody or people are brave enough to do it to people's face, because so many people just do it on social media, and when they get the opportunity to confront somebody they've been critical openly, just clam up and wuss out.
Well, so it's easy to do when you're 10 foot above them behind a wall of a physical wall and security, right?
Yeah, I suppose. The whole thing is just really sad, because we all can agree that this team sucks, and it sucks about as bad as it's ever sucked. And it may be, and not maybe, it's close to historically sucking the worst ever. And so I get that everybody's angry, and I get that everybody really lost their minds after blowing the 3-goal lead, because that's inexcusable and it's embarrassing. I don't know, man. Sometimes I hope everybody keeps their head about them and remembers that at the end of the day, we're all supposed to be supporting a club, and getting abusive about it is probably not the way to do it.
Yeah, I think in the end there are a lot of people that don't think of the clubs the way you and I do, or Dan probably does either, for that matter, being more of a European sort of community club kind of background, probably. And you and I have been around for a long, long time, and so we have probably a different feeling than maybe younger people do. And at the end of the day, that's the thing for me. I never would be one to tell anybody else how to support the club, because, like, I, for example, don't want to stand in the end zone. I want to stand and be at midfield. I don't want to stand. I want to sit. I don't want to be talking to people. I want to be, or listening to yahoos. I want to be watching the game analytically. So everyone's enjoyment of the game is differently, and some people like to yell, and some people will get very upset. And if they want to, there's a line of etiquette you can't cross. At some point you're going to get, you are going to break rules if you're throwing things or such like that. And while you and I wouldn't give somebody the finger like that, it's like, whatever, I guess. But, also good on Paul to push back on that a little bit. I'm not saying that getting into DMs and stuff is the right way to go about it, but certainly he came out on social media and said, hey, we're frustrated just as much as you guys are, and if he'd have pushed back publicly on, that's beyond the pale, I would have been all in favor of that. You're going to make some of those people are going to react even more negatively, of course, if you do that. But, I don't mind the captain standing up for himself and his team and his coach. I think that shows a lot of heart on Paul's part.
So, Buzz, based on what happened Saturday night, where do you think, is that a turning point? Does it get worse from here? Does it get better? I mean, look, the schedule does not favor this team.
Yeah.
In the coming 10, 14 days.
Well, a moment like this can go either way. It can destroy a team and have it fall apart, or it can galvanize a team together, as the us against the world mentality. That can be the reaction too. A lot of it's going to depend on the people in that locker room and the coach, and some of it may be dictated by what happens next. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, the schedule is brutal. There's the LAFC and LA Galaxy have not lost a game at home all year. And Minnesota, who's almost in first place, has only lost one. So the next 3 on the road are absolutely brutal. Then you get a little bit of a break with St. Louis at home, but then Minnesota comes down here, and Minnesota, again, they're almost in first place, so they're pretty good. And then Seattle, you got to go Seattle, and we know that Dallas has never won there. I think it's never won, or maybe it's won in however 19 years or whatever it is. It's an almost impossible place to get points. So and then Cincinnati comes to town, who's right there at the top of the Eastern Conference. It's just the schedule is not doing any favors in a time when you need a break. And again, what it's going to come down to is the people in that group, in that locker room, and the coaching staff. Are they all together? Are they all buying in? Are they all going to use this to galvanize themselves? Or is this going to drive a stake into whatever cracks there were? And it really can go both ways. And the proof will be in what happens next.
So, Dan or Buzz, is the story of this game losing the lead, or is it holding, I don't know, what's the best way of saying it? You putting enough of a game together to get a 3-goal lead to begin with, no matter how you earned it?
Well, I think there's 2 takeaways. Go ahead, Dan. Go first. Yep.
No, it's just you said it. I don't know how much earning gets into it. They were gifted 2 goals by Zach McMath.
Yeah, I think there's 2 macro takeaways, Peter. And the first one is from the beginning lineup and the way the team played for the first part of the game. There's a takeaway there. And then there's a takeaway from the collapse. And I think it's 2 different things that we can macro level discussions that need to have happening, and there's a lot of minutia we can talk about too, but the lineup thing is fascinating to me because for me, this was the final nail in the coffin for my belief that the number one thing this coach cares about is defensive capabilities of the players in the game. He effectively started 8 defensive players, or if you want to say 7.5, because one of them is Illarra Mendy, who does have offensive qualities, then you could say that, but really only 2 attacking players are in the game. And those 2 attacking players, in fact, are both ones that defend pretty well. Paul Ariel is a smart player, and he cuts out passes and gets in the way of the lanes and makes it difficult for teams to build out, and Musa pressures. And the ID pressures pretty well and bangs on people. And then Delgado starting as the other 10, which is ridiculous. You're putting a holding mid up there. And that ended up working out in the sense that he was defending high and pressing them and making it very difficult for them to bail out. And yes, you got lucky with some goals, but this is effectively the club's MO. And this is the ultimate version of it in the sense that they're going to try and take what they're playing against a team that is the second best offense in the league behind Miami. And they're going to say, okay, how do we prevent them from being able to play? How do we stop them from being able to score? And they didn't go into a full, complete low block. Instead, they played a little bit of more midfield sort of area, and they made it very, very difficult for RSL to build and get forward and get their offense going. And yes, 2 lucky goals aside, but the bottom line is, that plan through a certain amount of the game was working and was effective, and that's what the goal was. Now, it's not sexy, it's awful, it's boring, it's really hard to watch, but at the same time, I received comments afterwards that was the best they've played in months. So it just depends on your perspective, how you whether you think that's a good way to play or not, like stifling the other team and trying to make it as impossible as you can for the other team to score. And then you, of course, yes, you've got to have some luck break your way. Martin Poss saves goals usually that keep them in games, and they got a couple of posts, and that's fine to me. Hitting a post is a missed shot. That's what you want, is RSL to shoot from wide and outside and deep, and that's what this team strives for. And the shot ratio for Dallas was 11 on target out of 16. That is phenomenal. That is absolutely clinical shooting on Dallas's part, and that's what this club does. And all their goals were pouncing on mistakes that the other team makes. That's quintessentially what this team does. So for 65, 70 minutes, this was as pure an FC Dallas performance as you can get. Unfortunately, the back 20 to 30 minutes is about as brutal of a defensive collapse as we've seen in a long time. And the real culprit, by the way, is Nkosi Tafari for changing the color of his hair back to some other weird color, and they immediately let in 3 goals instead of leaving it black like it was when he was. I'm teasing, of course. That's
right.
Not what happened,
Okay.
yeah.
So let's just stop for a second.
Yeah.
Let's break down. Let's talk about what caused the collapse. Because if you want to get angry, right, this is the thing to get mad about and get frustrated about. Is let's discuss what it is that took it from 3-0 to 3-1, 3-2, 3-3.
Well, the trigger for me was the 65th minute sub. 66 minutes, sub. It probably happened around 65, really, by the time it ticked over. The double sub, the Dante Sealy came in and Bernard Comunigo came in for Farfan and Areola. Now, to me, that screams scripted sub. That's planned. And I want to talk about subs later again, too. But in this moment, I was really, when this sub happened, I thought to myself, what are you doing? Because your plan of playing defense all over the field was working. And Dante Sealy is, what's the word I'm looking for? Terrible at defending. That's the word, right? And Bernard Comunigo is not much of a presser. He will pounce on a moment, but he's not going to create turnovers. He's not a defensive high player like Paulo Areola is. So I'm sure there was some idea about they're thinking they're going to be playing with sort of a bunkery deep defense, and you're going to try and get behind them. The thing is that like your all over the field defense was working. You were making it very difficult for them. Stick with that by putting in 2 players that are terrible at defense and taking out 2 players that are good at defense. To me, that changed the entire complexion of the game. And you could have still make that scripted sub, which was intended, I think, to take off Farfan and Areola for minute management. You could have, for example, instead of bringing in Dante Sealy, you bring in Omar Gonzalez and you have him and put him at center back and shift Kofi to left center back and shift Sam to left wing back. Now I've still got Marco Farfan out of the game, and yet I brought in a defensive player and I've maintained my defensive posture. Instead of Bernard Comunigo, you bring in Siki Nsebeling, who we have seen recently play that high 10 position. He is very active, very energetic, very tenacious. He annoys the crap out of people. Yes, he'll make a couple of defensive miscues, but that high up the field, you can live with it. He'll make a turnover or 2. That high up the field, you can live with it. At that moment, like bringing in 2 guys that don't carry the same defensive mentality to me made your team perhaps even subconsciously think, shit, now we got to sit and protect. And they sat and they stopped being progressive and active, and people started getting tired. Maybe there were some other guys that maybe should have been subbed out instead. Look and see how looks really tired. I don't think that happened until it was too late. That moment for me turned the game, and that one's on coach.
I think you could even bring it back a couple minutes before that. Diego Luna gets the goal. It's kind of whatever. Mastroeni makes 4 changes immediately. Nico tries to react to that with the two time subs. It's not really a good fit. The changes Mastroeni makes here's how effective the subs were. Of the 5 players that he brought on, 4 of them either had a goal or a goal creating action.
Yep.
And it just kind of kicked off that moment, right? Because you had first 30 minutes, FC Dallas gets absolutely battered. Chicho Arango alone has 6 shots before FC Dallas has 1. They get their way back in. They play some really, really effective soccer. Yes, McMath gives them a couple of goals, but that's because they're in really good positions, pressing high up the field. Those subs happen. And again, it's another 20, 25 well, I guess really 30 minutes where it's FC Dallas trying to defend the lead without the ability to defend the lead.
It was interesting. I was speaking with a season ticket holder. He's been a season ticket holder for a really long time, has seats right at midfield. And his comment to me, being at the game Saturday night, was it was so obvious this was going to happen when they scored the third goal. He said, not after the second goal, after the third goal. He said the level of elation and celebration from the team was so over the top, and so clearly they were so convinced they had it in the bag. He and everybody sitting around went, oh no, this is not good. And they said he said he and everybody around him were like prepared for this collapse to happen. And I thought that was an interesting observation.
Once that happened, I don't think anyone in the stadium was surprised by the time Real Salt Lake scored the equalizer with the last kick of the game.
Yeah, I felt the same way when the minute the first one went in. The first RSL one went in. I thought, oh, here we go. This is going to be a tie game.
Yeah, and that's just a reflection of this season in general, though, right?
Well, it is, and also watching the play in front of me, watching how this team performs. Once RSL got one, then they're like, oh, we can do this. We got confidence. We can beat these guys. Yeah.
And how many times have we talked about FC Dallas' inability to hold out a lead?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's a reflection of maybe not just this season. Maybe it's the way Nico's teams play or whatever it is. But, it's a reflection of not just this particular game or the club or historically. It's just this particular form or style that the team plays in that nobody trusts them to do anything right over the course of 90 minutes.
I was actually really surprised even that I felt like the coach maybe feels the same way because he started a couple of guys coming off of injury that he didn't have them come in and get those minute build up that he usually does. Like Armindi got a few, but Liam Fraser didn't get any. And so there's a risk factor there, or maybe the complete lack of belief in the other guys he's got that he's like, I have to run these guys, even though they just come back. And then Liam Fraser about 60 minutes started looking terrible. I was actually surprised he didn't get subbed off at that 65-minute sub, and he was not. When they yanked him off later after he failed to close down on the second goal, I thought, well, you did that about 15 minutes too late. But, it's just weird to have seen. Anytime a coach breaks his MO, it makes me nervous. And so when that lineup card came out, I thought, boy, this is just so weird.
So the Delgado thing, because I saw that he made player of the week bench or something like that, and I know he scored a goal. I'm interested in your thoughts, Buzz, as to has Nico uncovered some sort of form in him? Is he playing better in your mind, or is he still kind of a dude?
No, he's a dude. But he's a dude that I think is fine. He's a reasonable player. He can be at that level. I think. If Liam Fraser's 100% fit, I think Fraser's probably more reliable as a straight six next to Armindi. But Delgado's very adaptable and he puts in the work effort. And so, what's weird about that whole situation is the way they used him. Not that Delgado had his moments. He's done those kind of moments in training too, and they've used him at that spot in training. And I always figured it was just a body filling in. I didn't think it was actually a thing. Well, sure enough, it is a thing. So. That's what's remarkable about it is the fact that you would take a position that is clearly supposed to be a playmaker and providing some attacking something in the box, which none of the people that have been playing that spot really do. So maybe you might as well put in a guy up there that defends well. It was so weird to watch, but he did a great job. I mean, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. And he was really good at it. Now is that the way forward? Man, I don't know. You're going to have 3 really hard road games in a row, so maybe it is the way forward. It's so hard when you have a team like this. It's so impossible to say because the answer can't be like, oh, just play really good soccer. Well, this team's not capable of that. It's like, okay, you got to game plan it and figure out how to do it and figure out how to grind it out. So maybe we're going to find out. Maybe this is the way forward. He did really well.
Maybe that is the answer to all our problems. But just play really good soccer,
just play
guys.
Better soccer.
Come on, guys. Yeah. Let's go. I was also thinking about this the other day is if you got a really attacking minded coach in here, would they even have Like, what would an attacking minded lineup look like out of this roster?
Well, with the injuries you have, it won't look all that much different. The tactic might be different. I don't know if other coaches would look at this roster and say, "Oh yeah, 3 at the back." That's probably the biggest variation. But if you wanted to go more offensive, you can make more offensive choices. You can play Endelay. You can place Sealy as a wing. You can play, Areola as a wing back, as a more attacking kind of player. You can put, 2 forwards on the field as in a 4-4-2. You could, some of the choices of what would be a more attacking offense are just not available. It's Velasco, it's Jesus, it's Giovanni. It's like, those are the guys that are missing.
Yeah.
So there really isn't you'd think just play more offensive players. Man, who is that? There really aren't any more. You maybe put. Yeah.
That was kind of my realization as I was pondering this, is that maybe the reason why he keeps throwing all these defensive players out there is because that's really all he's got.
That's all he's got. I mean, you can do some weird stuff like play without a 6. You can play like a legit Iramendi double pivot and try and get more offense in there that way. You could play, actual wingers at wing back, but not Dante and just run at people. Like, play ones that can pass, like put Paul on one side and put, I don't even know, like Ansa on the other side. Just try and bring more players that have more offensive capabilities on the field. But I don't know that you wouldn't lose by like 4-3 or something, and that's just as bad. The coach is clearly making a calculation that my best chance is to win 1-0. And that's why they think, oh, great, I got 2-3 goals. This is going to be a cakewalk now. But, players get tired and they don't close down and they get, let's talk about Ima Tuamasi, for example. I thought he had his best game of the year. He was really good combining, getting forward. He had more like penetrating passes than almost everybody on the team. Yet one of the goals, he got caught up because the ball was lost in transition. He was upfield and Liam Frazier went out to cover for him and then didn't close down. And that was the second goal that Palacio hit, that just gorgeous shot in the corner because he had like 8 yards of space to shoot with, and it's like, it's not Ima's fault that he was upfield doing this one offensive run that he's supposed to do, when it got turned over by somebody else. So, that's the thing about this coach is like, he's always going to go defense first, always make the defensive choice. And then, the back end of this game shows you why he's that way.
Now, we're recording this very early, earlier than usual, Tuesday night, and we'll explain why we're doing that here a little bit later on. I'm assuming you haven't talked to anybody since the game or been out to practice or anything like that?
No, the team left, Monday afternoon, I guess. They trained, today's Tuesday, they trained this morning in L.A., so they're already out there, and so there was no opportunity to, other than the post-game press conference, which I think Dan went to. So maybe Dan can offer more. And then there's no media availability via Zoom that's been scheduled as of yet for like after this game. Perhaps we'll find out more. So we're really kind of shooting blind in terms of what's coming next. But Dan was there for the post-game press conference, which was always fun.
Yeah, how was that? Was it the typical fare with like 2 people in there, or was it a tense scene?
There was a few people in there. It wasn't actually tense. It was Nico got a little bit of word vomit on a question I asked about pushing Marco Farfan up higher and the adjustments made at the water break. He kind of went on a little bit about that. And then somehow he went into something where he dropped in his customary mention of young players making mistakes, which I assume was about Dante Sealy turning the ball away for a corner right at the end. But yeah, I mean, it was, just those pretty average. A lot of it was in Spanish. Obviously, I have no idea what the conversation was like there, though.
What was his mood?
For all the saying this is unacceptable and that's not good enough, he didn't seem as bad as he's been.
Okay. Interesting.
I asked him one time, like when Jesus comes back, and the team gets so much better, and how come Jesus can get the ball, on frame and get these goals and other guys can't, and like none of his other forwards can do that. And I said, what's the difference? And he was like, quality. It's like, so like you asked, like, does he know? Yeah, he knows. The dude's not dumb. This was the same coach that had this team in third place once, injuries aside. So like, he's aware of the roster that he has, and granted, he's a defensive first mentality anyway, but I think that's why he's leaning into it even harder.
It's hard as well with those press conferences because Nico Estevez in a press conference is not Nico Estevez talking one-on-one.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
I saw that Dennis the Menace got another yellow card.
Oh, yeah, Nolan? Yeah.
With it 28 seconds after coming on, was it?
Yeah, so here's the thing about Nolan. He definitely has a yellow card problem. He now has 7 yellow cards in 8 games this season, if you include North Texas. It clearly is a problem. The thing about Nolan is that he's a very intelligent player. He's a very smart player. And by the way, I found out what club he had an offer from, which I'll get to in a minute before he signed with SV Dallas. The flaw in his game, the reason why I was not 100% sure he was going to make it to this level, was that he is not what we would call fast. He's a touch slower, but so is Illarra. So like, you can be a great player. He just needs to make the mental adjustment yet. And that's true at North Texas and it's true at FC Dallas. He's not yet accustomed to players being able to close him down as fast as he can. And the yellow card he got in this particular game, the ball was out in front of him and he thinks he's going to get to it. And here comes a really fast guy flying in and he doesn't adjust and he steps on the guy's foot. And it's kind of a crap yellow card. But the greater point, the macro point is he's getting these cards at this prolific rate. And the bottom line is that for Nolan to make it, he's going to have to learn to adjust his mental side of his game reading. He has to adjust that to understand that where he fits into the game in terms of pace. Honestly, understudying Armindi for him will be really good. Like when we saw him play the other day, he was the more 8 type player. He was the one passing and getting forward, more like Armindi. So it's just a macro level thing that will come with time. If he's going to make it, it'll come. If it doesn't ever come, he's not going to make it. So I just wanted to bring it up that it's not like he's a foul happy player or an overly physical player. It's just that like these guys are beating him to the ball by 1/10 of a second, and so he kicks them instead of the ball, and he gets a yellow card. So it's not it's just a small thing, but it's the thing right now that's going to keep him from being really great at this stage. And even though like when he's missing from North Texas, you can clearly see it. He holds the middle together so well when he's down there. He's a really quality player, but we want him to make this next step. And a big part of it's going to be that slight mental adjustment. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Before we move on, anybody other than obviously Martin Paz, who I continue to feel like we don't deserve, but anybody else playing well, or you feel like you want to call out as having a good game?
Well, I mentioned Ima Tomasi. I thought that was his best game of the year, which, again, everything's in context. That doesn't mean he's Pele. It just means he had a really good game. Sometimes people are like, that dude sucks. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. It was his best game of the year. He played pretty well. The other one was, I know we've said this a million times, but Asir Yaramendi is just so friggin' good. He was so quiet in this game. You hardly noticed he was there. But he played a full 90 minutes, and it was 87% passing. But he had 5 shot-creating actions, 2 goal-creating actions. He was 4 for 1 tackles, 4 progressive passes, 3 progressive carries, which is crazy for him, and 7 recoveries. The dude is just phenomenal, even in a game like this where you're like, well, was he even out there? Yeah, he was dominating the game. And so much so that there was about a 10 to 15-minute stretch, and it was driving me bonkers, where he kept having to gesture to his own teammates to make the run. Why are you not making that run? Please make that run. And then they would run and he would go and they would pass it to him. And he had a gesture for like four people in a space of about 10 or 15 minutes. And it was right before Dallas started playing really well. And after the last one, he was over there standing in front of the coach, and he turned around at coach and either yelled at coach or gestured at coach or something like clearly like, this stuff sucks, like pointing back towards the field. And then shortly after that, they really elevated their game and started playing a lot better. But I thought it was such a microcosm of the season. He's got to be so frustrated sometimes with the guys that are around him that can't read the game like he does. But, you have to adapt to the guys around you. You have to either help them understand or you have to adapt to the fact that they don't understand. And that's part of the process with him. Obviously, if you had another player like him in the middle, this thing would be so different. But you don't. So.
That even happened with Paz in the first half, where Paz expected him to come back for a short pass, for whatever reason, Martin Paz tried to make the pass with Illarra absolutely nowhere near him. I think it was Ojeda easily gets the ball first. Paz does well to push him wide, but then that just leads to a cross into Arango. I mean, that was very nearly disaster in the first, 20 minutes?
You ever think Illarra Mendy woke up this morning after all the storms and destruction and thought about those moments in the game, Buzz, and thought to himself, what have I done? Why didn't I just not retire?
Well, he did say a couple of weeks ago that he wants to play a couple more years, but his contract's up after this year, so we'll find out if he's like, you know what, I'm not doing this, I'm out. Like, he could easily walk away if he wanted to. They don't have him. According to the contract, the release when he was signed, they only had this year, and that's it. This was the option that they picked up. So, cross your fingers that he wants to stay. Cause
you go to Saudi Arabia and triple his salary in about 10 minutes, probably.
Yeah, maybe.
So.
But then
you got to live in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, my wife not go for that.
Well. Goodness gracious. All right. Well, that is, and by the way, Buzz mentioned it. It's the first time Dallas has blown a 3-goal lead. And I also believe in the inverse, that's the first time RSL's ever come back after being down 3-0 in a game. So lots of glory poured all over the team this weekend.
But funny enough, Dallas has done that twice to other teams. They've come back. I think it's Colorado once, and Montreal was the other one. They came back 3-0 and won.
But if you want to put one silver lining on the game, the league's top scorer did not score.
That's true.
They did, in fact, tie. Dallas did. They lost only one game in the month of May, which is incredible.
Yeah, I know. There's all sorts of weird juxtaposition about all of this that is very confusing. First off, I looked at the standings, and I was looking at the team's record. I was shocked that they've only had 4 draws this year. I would have sworn it feels like they've had 14.
You're thinking of last year.
I guess maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just maybe I'm conflating both the last and this season, but the fact that they're now 3-6-4 caught me off guard. I mean, I'm not surprised they have more losses and draws than wins. I was just surprised. I thought they had more ties than losses, but alas, no, they don't.
I mean, the thing is, Peter, is that like, as bad as this is, they're 2 wins behind 7th place. Like this league is sometimes stupid, where it's like,
this league is always stupid. Not sometimes, always.
That part. Like the fact that it's like you could just win 2 or 3 games and you're going to be in like 6th. It's just ridiculous. But everybody, there are actually teams that are worse than Dallas in the Western Conference, which is amazing. As bad as we think this team is, there are 2 teams playing worse.
Yeah,
which is incredible. It's just the West, let alone the East.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, Lucci.
Yeah. How much longer is Lucci going to keep his job?
I don't know, but like Dallas has 3 wins, right? Mm-hmm. So Western Conference, San Jose has 3, Kansas City has 2, St. Louis has 3 wins. So those are all the same or worse. Eastern Conference, Nashville, Atlanta, Montreal have 3 wins. Chicago has 2 and New England has 2. So there's like 8 teams that are as bad or worse than FC Dallas in this league. So it's like, we talk about how horrible this is. Like, is it going to be the worst season of all time? Man, there are teams that are way worse, not way worse, that are having an even harder time than Dallas is.
So what you're trying to say is it's not a league of parity, it's a league of dudes.
It's a league of dudes, like we said before. Yeah.
It is a league of dudes. Without a doubt.
And I think that's why Lucci hasn't been fired, is because they took their best player and sold him right before the season. Poor Lucci. They sold Cabe Cal right before the season started.
Right.
And they went and got him a playmaking 10.
Poor Lucci. That's twice now that's happened to him.
At least they got him in playmaking 10. But like, that team was a shambles already. And it's not like they fixed the defense, which is their biggest problem. And they've given up 34 goals. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is.
That's 14 more goals allowed than Dallas. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, okay, we mentioned it. It's not going to get any easier from here. And so the Galaxy on Wednesday, LFC on Saturday night, back-to-back. This is the first time I think this has happened where Dallas has traveled out to L.A. and played both teams.
Yeah, I think so.
And so, I guess it's time to talk roster health update and figure out who, Nico's going to have at his disposal to call up.
Well, on paper, everyone is healthy except for the guys that are out long term. Technically, Jesus is just questionable, and we know he traveled. So if they weren't confident he was going to play sometime in the next 2 games, and the word on the street, the rumor I heard was that he was close to being chosen to be able to go like on Friday, Saturday going into the game, but they decided to be careful, or he didn't cross whatever threshold that was close. So from the fact that he traveled, I imagine that either this game or the next one he will make an appearance, maybe off the bench against the Galaxy. So he has everybody at his disposal that he can, in the context of this season. The only people he's missing are now Paxton, Velasco, and Giovanni, who are all out, of course, long term. So the question is, do you feel like you have a better shot against one of those teams than the other? Well, they're both on 24 and 25 points. Surprisingly, the Galaxy have more, but LA has more points per game, and they've just played one less game. So they have one more win, so like LAFC does. Neither of them have lost a game at home. The third game's against Minnesota, who's lost one game at home but has a better road record. They actually have 25 points also and have 2 less games than everybody else. They're like Dallas. They have 2 games in hand. So those 3 games are brutal. Honestly, if you can steal ties at any of those venues, given the state of this team, I would consider that a moral victory, because all 3 of those teams are significantly better than SC Dallas at this point of the season. Do you want to try and load up for one game and not the other? Do you try and mitigate? I think this coach will try and mitigate. He'll try and play as tight as he can, rotating guys in and out, managing guys. I'm not super optimistic. There's no suspensions for Dallas. There's no pending suspensions for Dallas. They're basically in as good a health as they've been and a good a roster shape as they've been all year. One small oddity, for some reason, Antonio Carrera is with them and traveling, which means that, to me, that means that Jimmy Maurer is not. So I'm going to try and find out why. But at this stage, I only found out that when they put up some photos of the travel squad like a couple hours ago. So, maybe something going on with Jimmy Maurer, perhaps unknown. But, neither Antonio nor Jimmy were going to play anyway. It's going to be Martin Paz the whole way. So it's a moot point, but it's just kind of interesting. So, you can make a good guess as mine. And the number one question, Peter, will be what you brought up earlier, is Delgado as this 10, this super defensive role. Is that the way to go? Both of these teams score a fair amount of goals. LA and LAFC both are at 25 and 27. Those are pretty offensive teams. 10 more goals each than Dallas has. So you're going to have to try and keep it tight, I think. So expect some dire, depressing, boring soccer, and then you can make a guess as well as I can.
Yeah, I mean, for those of us that are traveling out there, I'm so excited I've made this decision months ago to do this. I'm anticipating a stereotypical grind it out, try to, the Nico thing that we've all come to hate and find incredibly boring. But my anticipation is Dallas is about to go on a pretty brutal losing streak between these 3 games, because it's such bad timing to have 3 road games in a row. I guess the only silver lining of it is you don't really have to travel for 2 of. I mean, you travel to LA and you're hanging out there for a week, right? The weather out there right now, by the way, is remarkable. I think the high is like 75, so that probably helps a little bit. But it is a weird league, man, and it wouldn't be too much of a surprise to see Dallas do something and get maybe 4 points out of the 2 games just because it's MLS.
Yeah, maybe you get a California homecoming bounce out of Paul and Leggett. Maybe those teams take you for granted. The Galaxy give up a fair amount of goals in 22, which is not super high, but it's not super low either. The LAFC is actually better. It's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. I don't have any profound thoughts about how they tend to play, other than I feel like for LA Galaxy, Puig is the really dangerous guy, whereas, so that may be about like maybe you're looking for a double, 6 look there, but you certainly don't want to take Armendi out of the game, but you might be tempted to put Delgado back there for one game and then Frazier in there for the other game, just to try and mitigate some stuff, you know. I don't know. I'm honestly at this point, like the last game confused me so much with the defensive 6 as a 10 thing that, you know, honestly, nothing would surprise me at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except if he goes away from the 3-4-3, that would surprise me because he's so invested in it now.
Okay.
You know?
Jesus for wing back incoming.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
look,
but Bernie at wingback wouldn't surprise me. And if I was going to bet, I'd bet Jesus comes off the bench against the Galaxy and then starts versus LAFC would be my guess.
boy. Well, I'm glad I'll get to watch it all play out for you guys. I'll come back with a full book report of the trip for you.
Yeah. I want to hear about LAFC. I've been to the StubHub or whatever the Galaxy's called now. So
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've never been to either one of the stadiums, so I'm getting to check them both off. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm just not excited that Dallas is in this current iteration of the club, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Well, think back to that time they went out into LA and won that playoff game. I think back to that time that Shells went out there and he rotated the entire squad to save up for the cup game, and then the rotated team won. So, like, there have been some shock Dallas and West LA results before. Maybe we'll cross our fingers. Maybe we'll see one of those.
Yes, sirree, Bob. And Buzz, by the way, I forgot to do this for you. You said that you wanted to talk about Musa and the Open Cup.
Yeah, just real quick. You know, what I care about, and I got some pushback, of course, about my stance about him, and what I care about is mentality. And I have since learned that the baby came on Monday, and then on Tuesday morning, he was out there and trained, and he was ready to go. The plan was that he was going to travel and play, and then something changed. What changed doesn't matter. What I cared about was the player's mentality, and the player was ready to go, and he didn't go because of something else, not because of him. So that's all I cared about, that he was on board with me. He was ready to go, ready to play. So I love it. And the guy's a warrior. I really like this player. Like, the more I watch him play, like, he's demonstrative, you know, and he kind of will get, like, expressive his disappointment. But I'm okay with that. I don't mind a little bit of, like, jerkiness in my professional athlete, you know, when you can produce. And he's been producing pretty good clip lately. You know, granted, he should have had one in this game and could have put the game away perhaps, and he didn't. But, you know, he had, it's like 5 and 7 or something now, something like that. So that's all. I just wanted to bring that up, that he was ready to play and ready to go and was out there training Tuesday in anticipation of that. So I applaud him for that.
And also on the world famous red crayon run sheet, the words Marco topic.
That says macro topic for those of you that can read English.
Oh, I don't have my glasses on. It does say macro topic.
Well, it's funny you call it a Marco topic. This is what made me think of it when I was watching Farfan sub out. And it's like, this is a macro topic that I don't know the answer to this. I just wanted to raise this as a question. Because Coach Estevez clearly, and I think he's not the only one, mind you, clearly he's been using 5 subs to manage workload minutes on players. But I think by consistently subbing guys out, you know, not every game the same guy, but by consistently subbing out guys here and there at the 60-minute mark, that you're developing a habit of not always playing 90 minutes, that you're developing a rhythm of playing 60 minutes. And so I can't help but wonder over time if this isn't a bad way to manage load minutes. Because what's happening is, rather than rotating a player and giving the whole player the game off, he's just giving him playing 60 minutes and giving him his 30 minutes to rest over a couple of games. And you see what I'm saying? So like, I think lots of coaches are doing this. I just worry about when I see guys fading after 60 minutes, I keep thinking to myself, why aren't you 90 minutes fit? You know, if you're coming back from injury, I understand why you're not. But if you're not coming back from injury, if you've been subbed out at 60 minutes too often? It's something I wonder about, and so I wanted to bring it up. Let's see what you guys thought about that idea, and just sort of see what people out there thought, because it bothers me a little bit. So I don't think that I like it. I mean, I get it. I know why it's happening. I'm just not sure that I like it because of this idea, this 60-minute idea.
Dan?
I think the important part is, like you say, players should be 90 minutes fit.
Peter, what do you think? Do you agree?
Well, I mean, I just think it's a different time and day. Buzz, you and I are old school, and and I think that our expectations of players has just changed. And I think coaches try to manage players in different ways than they used to, and I do get frustrated by it. But I also think players today are brought up and told to pay attention to their bodies in ways that they weren't previously, you know. Ronnie Lott had his little finger cut off because he didn't want to have surgery and miss the beginning of his 49ers season at one point, that back in, you know, in another era. So that would never happen today. I mean, I think a lot of players don't play through pain. I think a lot of players are told not to and let the trainers know when they feel anything, because they don't want to afford, they'd rather have them out 2 or 3 weeks than 2 or 3 months. And that probably, I guess, is the smarter way of doing it. But in terms of how many minutes you play, I do think that I do think everybody's too careful, but I'm also not a professional soccer player, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
You know, I've been talking for 2 seasons, not to use your Marco joke again, but for 2 seasons we've been talking about how Marco Farfan played too many minutes. And so he's an example of a guy that subbed out at the 60 minutes mark of this game for man management. We pierced it, and it cost them the game. But, you know, why instead, if you didn't have 5 subs, you would have done something like rotate him for the cup game. And then he would have had a game off and not be playing every single game. And then maybe he could have gone
but part of me wonders, I mean, is it some sort of weird passive-aggressive thing that Nico's doing just to kind of prove to everybody that he doesn't have the right kind of roster construction, that things that aren't in his control and it's somebody else's responsibility that's getting effed up to royal hell? And you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that sounds very conspiratorial and ridiculous. Yeah. But there are points in time where I watch coaches, not just Nico. I mean, I've thought this commonly about multiple managers in multiple leagues around the world, where I just think managers are doing things so obviously ridiculous that they're trying to get fired or they're trying to make a point.
Well, if you trying to get fired is interesting, because that's the thing. It's like you'd have to be so confident in your job security, like a Popovich guy, to do something like play a really weird guy to show your GM that he's got the wrong person. Popovich would do that. Pep Guardiola could do that. Could Nico Estevez do that in a results business where he could get fired any minute? I don't know, but then you say maybe he wants to get fired. Oh wow, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe he does. Who knows? You know, that's a little bit conspiratory, but I just, over the time, having watched him use this 60-minute sub to man management, it's over and over and over again, I'm not sure. And I know, of course, too, people think I'm a fuddy-duddy about the 5 subs, and that's definitely true. But in the world of 5 subs, I don't know that I like this subbing guys out at 60 minutes all the time, because games have rhythm, and being able to, and like, think about how this coach brings guys back from injury with the 15-minute sub, then the 35-minute sub, then the 45-minute sub. Like, he builds this rhythm up towards 90, and yet we're going to yank guys out at 60 all the time. And literally with 5 subs, it's like half the team all the time. So I don't know. It just concerns me.
I mean, I think the last game's a perfect example of effective use of subs. You know, RSL makes the quadruple change. They follow up 10 minutes later. All but one of those players is involved in one of the 2 goals. You know, it feels like with Nico, it's exactly, you know, bringing on. I mean, Bernie was okay, but bringing on Dante Silly in place of Marco Farfan, it was just kind of like, you're a body, you're here, go be a body. There's no, like, you know, that it's not using substitutes for this, you know, to actually make a difference in the game, which is the coaches. You know, one thing you often say is that, you know, soccer is in game one of the least coach affected sports. Well, that's his effect, and he had a really good effect at the water break in the first half, pushing a team up around what RSL were doing to kind of get themselves back into the game. But then the second half, it's just like, all right, well, I've already planned my subs. It doesn't matter what the situation in the game's like. Here we are.
Yeah. It's this funny thing about Nico Estevez is, as angry or frustrated as I get and how he manages, there's a part of me that is reserved enough to think Man, the guy is just in a terrible situation, and I think he's doing what he thinks he needs to do to, frankly, keep his job as long as he can and put out some sort of result, whether they be 1 point or whatever. And I guess I understand it from that perspective, but it makes it an incredibly unentertaining game or team to watch. And it's been that way now for the entirety of last season and for a lot of this particular season, and that's a real bummer. And that's part of the reason why I was so surprised and shocked and kind of weirded out by the fan reaction on Saturday night, is because it kind of breaks my heart that all of this is happening after this club has worked so hard to get over the attendance hump. Because I do believe we are now on the precipice of this thing where I know they report sellouts, but man, every time I turn on the TV and look at the stands, it's clearly not. It's not a butts in seats out, if you know what I'm saying. And
percentage of butts and seats is dropping fast.
And I'm pretty sure that the quality of what is on the field is going to start really is going to become a consistent reflection in the stands here before too long, especially if these next 3 road games go south.
Yeah. This feels like one of those really dangerous road trips. It'll be fascinating to see what happens as they come through it. Like, does the owner go in with an expectation that, look, you're not getting these 3 games, and if you get something, is that a huge win? Or is this like, you better get something here or you're in trouble? I mean, it's so hard to tell with this ownership group where this coach is and how long they take to make decisions,
Well, the other kind of observation that I am frustrated by, and this is, I feel like we have this, one of us makes this comment about this point in a bad season every time, which is, where's Dan Hunt?
I haven't seen him this year.
He's there every day.
No, I mean, literally, like, why? I mean, I know we all goof on Mark Cuban and Jerry Jones for inserting themselves way too often as the face of those teams. And I do appreciate that Dan makes at least a somewhat of an attempt to live in the shadows. But as the leader of the club, there are clear moments in time in a season where the person running this thing needs to step out of the shadows and into the forefront and speak up and say something to the supporters and the fans and the staff or whatever, and just make a statement. I don't know what that is, but he's got to say something. And if it's, him, Zanata, like, where are these guys? Part of me also feels bad for Nico because he's just hung out to dry and nobody in the front office is doing anything to help that dude in terms of PR and public relations or media relations or any of that stuff. It's really weird how they've just kind of hung him out to dry, which, by the way, is exactly what they did to Lucci.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I wonder if part of Paul Arriola's thing is recognizing that as well. And just being like, well, I'm the captain, might as well be me then.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I know Dan Hunt is involved because I've talked to coaches that say, or TDs or PR people that say, there's nobody else that has the owner down the hall who's meeting with everybody in the organization a couple times a week, meeting with the coach twice a week, meeting with the TD a couple times a week, whatever it is. I'm saying twice a week. I don't know what it is. I know that it's multiple times. I know it's every single week that he is intimately involved with everything they're doing. Now, is he making decisions? Is he pulling the trigger? Is he doing it? That I can't tell you. It may just be that he's just watching it all happening. There certainly isn't any visible, evidence that he's doing anything active. He's leaving player personnel decisions, but as we can tell, to Zanata and his new assistant TD or whatever that guy's title is. I think Clark honestly is pretty distracted by the Chiefs. Yet he's there. I think every home game he's there, unless there's a Chiefs conflict directly. Like he was there this weekend. Yeah. Somebody I know saw him. So,
I'm not saying they're not paying attention,
but
why aren't they out in front of the fans? Why aren't they saying something publicly after a game, or to the media, or putting something on social media, or making some sort of comment? it just, I don't know, man. It just, I just, it's one of those things that it's a trait that they have as a ownership group that I find really annoying and disappointing.
There's probably a bit of a risk assessment in that whatever Dan would say is probably not going to help just because the way he says things.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe they've told him he kind of comes off as a knucklehead when he does that kind of stuff. But I just the effort. You're right, Dan. It's probably a risk assessment thing. They're like, yeah, what good is going to come out of that? Why even bother? And part of me just wants to see the effort and the attempt to engage in a good way with the fan base, that we recognize this is a really poor time, a bad time for the club, and we're doing everything we can to fix it, blah, blah, blah. But whatever. Even if it's almost cliche crap, I don't know. I don't like the fact that the players and the coach are having to do this by themselves, because they're not the only ones culpable for this.
I'm a little bit surprised this year, actually. And I guess it goes into the end of last year, too. Normally, you would see Dan and or Clark, at the press conference. You would see him after the coaches' media availability go in and having a chat and, whatever they chat about, probably a debrief of the game and whatnot. I haven't seen that in a long time. And I'm sure they do that in the week. It's just weird not having that after many years of seeing that immediately after the game.
Yeah, they used to make a beeline for the coach's office and go talk to him right after every game, for like 5 or 10 minutes before they would come out and do PR or whatever. Maybe that's I don't go to the press conferences anymore, and I'm not in the locker room either. So maybe that's happening somewhere out of vision and we just don't know it. But these days we only hear from Zanata, at beginning of the season, the end of the season, or that luncheon they organized, or if he happens to be out at practice and I go chase him down, maybe once in a while I can get him, but it's very rarely. He kind of goes and hides on the other side away from where I am most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, well. The other thing that I saw this week that just made me laugh and gave me a great level of satisfaction. Have you guys seen the latest episode of Welcome to Wrexham?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm getting ready to talk about?
I do not, but the last one I watched was the 100-year-old fan.
Okay. So what did they accomplish at the racecourse ground that made you immediately think of Toyota Stadium?
The temporary bleachers.
Did you not spend the entire episode listening to them talk about and debating about spending the money to build a 2,000 temporary seats?
Yeah.
For just like the few games left in the season at a cost of about $1 million, and immediately think, wait a second, why haven't we done that at the north part of the stadium already?
I immediately discounted it because they showed that chart that had the cost of the seats versus the revenue it was going to generate. And I immediately thought, oh, no way in hell the Hunts are doing that. So I was like, I just forgot about it in terms of the Hunts, because they would never do that.
Well, but the charts for the Wrexham thing was only for a few amount of see the chart. What I don't think they did a very good job of explaining is because they built those stands for a very limited number of games left before they have to take them apart so they can start constructing the full-time replacement.
Yeah.
My point is they could have spent the $1 million a few years ago and added 2,000 seats of temporary seating and left it there and made a lot of money from those seats.
Yeah, well, they probably still want to use the stage for crap. The Hall of Fame.
How many times have they used the stage?
They use it for the Hall of Fame concert. And maybe one other concert. That's about it. I mean,
yeah. Well, I also know they can take those things apart and put them back together. That's the whole point of those
Peter,
things.
you may have forgotten that the Hunts are terrible at this.
I know, but that's why I laughed when I saw that in the episode, because it just proved to me that it could be done.
Oh yeah.
Many things related to this. And maybe I should go out there and start cussing at Dan and Clark Hunt.
They literally had temporary bleachers there. They literally took them out. They deemed them quote unquote a safety hazard and eliminated them. They had them.
Well, I was talking about something a little more grand than that ridiculous setup they had for a while there. Although even now I miss that, but
yeah,
I just, my point being is, and by the way, those were really nice seated seats. It wasn't even
They were
just
nice.
metal benches.
Yeah.
There was actual seats.
Oh, they look real nice. Yeah.
Yeah, they look comfy and the whole bit. And there was disabled assisted, whatever that is called, section for wheelchairs and the whole thing. It was fantastic. And I really thought the commentary from the radio guy about how nice it was to have all four sides closed in again.
Yeah.
Really changed the atmosphere in the stadium. And I thought, well, crazy how that works like that.
Well, it's closed in. It just doesn't have seats.
Well, there's nobody over there.
It's got a wall.
We can't even get them to honk and the horns and flash the lights when they score a goal.
It has a lovely graffiti painting, Peter. It looks lovely.
And the crazy ass sign.
And some big banners.
And that RAV4 has RAV4 in really
That
big
made me laugh
letters.
when I saw that Tundra. It's like, oh my God, we had to label the truck.
Hey, is there any, Buzz, you talked about this, what feels like forever ago. Is there any new word on when they're going to announce whatever ridiculous thing they're going to do to the stadium?
Okay, sure. Yeah. What I've heard was that for some reason there was a delay in the process where they just stopped everything for like a bit. And I think I mentioned before, like you had the rumor that someone was telling you something about Dallas, and I joked that that'd be really funny if the city of Dallas was somehow involved. I don't think it was that, because what I understand is that they changed the order in which they're going to do stuff, and now they're starting with this winter with the first phase. And so, when you're going to hear something it's hard to say, because my understanding is that they're now, because originally the plan was they were going to start something mid-season, but that's what changes. Now it's the end of this season. So, they are spending, if people are worried like, oh, it's going to get pushed and it's going to get pushed, maybe that's possible, but they're spending a boatload of money going through the preparation phases of this. They're way past like concept. They're now into architectural design, engineering planning, build planning, how you put all the stuff and start bringing it in and doing this and that, the timeline. They're spending a lot of money on the pre-phases of this construction. So everything I know from people that are involved is that it's happening, and it's going to start happening this winter. So your guess is as good as mine when they'll announce something. The real question will be, how's it going to affect seating over the next 2 or 3 seasons? So cross your fingers. Maybe that's why they don't want to bring it up, because they don't want to bring it up now. They're going to wait till after everybody renews their seats or whatever.
Well, boy, it feels like a really good opportunity to inject some enthusiasm and excitement into the fan base over some really kick-ass drawings and mock-ups of what the stadium's going to look like, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's exciting.
That could go a long way in getting people to stop paying attention to the the giant shit in the middle of the room and start looking at the art on the wall instead.
Yeah. No, yeah. The limited stuff I've seen looks really good. So, I'm really excited.
You've seen mock-ups?
I've seen some drawings, yeah. But
oh, do tell.
No, well, that's it. That's all I can tell you. It looks really exciting. Because, the thing is that it changes. That's the thing. It's like you get into the design phase and the engineering phase, and then it's like, oh, well, that can't be that angle or that high or that wide or whatever. So it all gets changed. So like anything I've seen is just some artist screwing around. It means nothing. Oh. So we'll see what happens when they actually announce something and they actually put out real renderings. I think people will be impressed. It looks amazing.
One thing to keep in mind is, remember, they got burned pretty badly with the Hall of Fame. They had to take an entire level off of that thing because of the rising costs of concrete and everything at the time.
Yeah, the some of the mantras I've heard is like they want the other 3 sections to be as, other 3 sides to be as nice and as equivalent to the Hall of Fame sides, and so they want it to be a very modern, very cool stadium. There's this involvement of this idea of this hotel and mixed use and all this other stuff over there on the east side. It's like, it's a massive, there's a point at which, like, some of the people I've talked to, I'm like, why don't they just knock the whole thing down and start over? But, you got to keep playing in the meantime, and that's why not. So this thing is a massive, massive undertaking, that's, like right now, the number I heard was 150 million. I bet it's way over that by the time they're done. So it's going to be crazy.
Well, all right, boys. I guess we'll see how it goes. Hey, I look at it this way. I'm going to Disneyland in between the games, so it won't be. There'll be a lot of joy and happiness in my life to balance it out. So there.
Well, just go watch North Texas Soccer Club play. They are in first place. They've lost one game all year. Tar Scott's tearing it up.
God, the idea of driving all the farting way to Arlington.
Yeah, it's so far. I do twice a week the other way. I do love going to those games. It's like 10 feet over there.
Yeah, you probably walk over there.
I could. I don't, but I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, I got nothing else to say. I think I've spoke my piece.
Yeah, there's a couple of youth kids that are in some of these national team ID camps going on. The FC Dallas Academy season is ending, and all 4 of the top age groups, 15, 16, 17, and 19, they all qualify for the playoffs. They all finished in first or second place in their division, and they almost all did pretty well in the next cup. But either way, they're all in. So, I've been hearing some weird things about some structural stuff that might change down there. So that'll be fascinating. But, go Academy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope everybody continues to fight through what is an awful, awful season and try their hardest to support the boys and the club as best they can. And just hope and know that it'll get better, right? They won't be a wooden spoon contender every season, because that's just not what this club is at its core.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, we've only had a season that's this comparatively bad once before.
And it was 20 years ago.
Bad. It was 20 years ago. So, either something's going to change eventually. They're not going to, the Hunts won't sit around forever with it this bad. They consistently have produced a team that's either in the playoffs or like, what's the total? Is it either 7 or 8 times they've missed the playoffs in their 29 years of existence, right? So this is not a level they're going to accept long term. When Lucci missed, they canned him. So, they are slow to react, but they won't leave it this way forever. Something will change. And the bigger question becomes, how many failed coach cycles before they start to look beyond just the coach for a problem? Like, given the amount of medical problems we're seeing right now, they ought to be looking like top to bottom of their medical program. Given the fact that the academy has stopped flowing, they need to look at that angle. Given the fact that the players they're signing are not, they're selling players. Did I tell you my Warren Buffett story, like my analogy?
No.
I was talking to my brother about stocks and Warren Buffett. I was like, because I have a stock that has done well. And I was like, oh, should I sell off a little bit of that so to pay off for my initial investment? And then I'm playing with house money. I was talking to my brother, and he said, Warren Buffett says, no, because if you only sell your good stocks, all you're left with is your shit stocks. And that's what FC Dallas is. They sold all the good stocks, and all they're left with is the crap.
Yeah, that's
so,
a great analogy.
At some point you got to look at the person who's deciding which stocks to sell and which ones to buy and which ones to keep. So, we'll see how it goes. Clark Hunt is not dumb. Eventually he will do something,
Well, I should say that it's a good analogy, although I would suggest that Jesus Ferreira and Paxton Pomacall would disagree with you on that. But...
No, it's just a macro level analogy. But some of those guys, some of those good stocks they have are hurt,
right.
And Jesus, they had a chance to sell, and they said no. Paxton's never going anywhere now because of injury problems. But there's still some quality here. There's just not enough quality here.
We got the co-founder of the soccer tournament, the $1 Million Tournament, on the show last weekend, and that guy was great. That thing starts on the 6th. So did you guys know that the entry fee for that thing went up this year from $15,000 to $40,000 a team?
Wow.
That's really going to affect me not watching it again.
Why don't you watch it, Dan? Do you just have no interest in it?
I watched a game because I was bored while working, and it was just shit. It was bad five-a-side. I could watch it any indoor place.
Okay. I thought it was more interesting than that.
Yeah, I'm with Dan. I thought it was not.
Mario Balotelli and Nani are on a team this time.
But ultimately, it's just a bunch of dudes, right? They're just getting together to play for some money. It's not actual teams.
It is, and that's kind of what I like about it. But I also do like this bit at the end that they do with the target score bit, where just because the game is over, the game is not over, and now there's like sudden death, and I find that kind of fascinating where they start taking players off the field. It's a weird, janky bit, and I'm typically not into that, but I found it interesting last year.
I used to say that was what I thought would be a fascinating way to do overtime in soccer would be to every 3 minutes you have to take off a player, until it opens the field up, and eventually you get 6-on-6, 5-on-5 until somebody scores.
Well, in this tournament, once they get to what they call the target score, every 2 minutes they have to take a player off, and it'll get down to as little as 2v2. And they had that happen last year before. And as soon as it goes to 2v2, as soon as somebody turns the ball over, the game's, somebody scores and wins it. But it's fascinating stuff. And it's $1 million on the line. I mean, it's literally $1 million for one team. You either win it or you're out.
No, I get it. It's not, I'm with
Not
Dan.
your jam.
It's not my jam.
All right. Not your jam.
Yeah, I don't really watch indoor that much, for that matter.
Well, I play indoor, but I don't like watching it very much. But for some reason, I find this interesting and whatever. Okay. All right, boys. Well, have a great week, and we got a lot of soccer to talk about when we come back next week, don't we?
Yeah, and I want to hear all about LAFC since I've not been to that one.
I will. I'll let you know. I think I'm getting hooked up with. They've got those ground level suites.
Yeah.
That are like field level. I think I'm sitting in one of those. So
wow,
we'll let you know how that goes.
You're big time.
Well, hell yeah. What'd you expect?
I don't know. Not that you were that big time.
I ain't sitting up in the top tier in the nosebleeds or something, bro.
I knew you were big time, but I didn't know you were that big time.
I'm going Hollywood, brother.
No, I sit with the people.
I know you do. You are the people. Nobody wants to sit with me.
Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Our partners over there got everything you want. They got all the domestic FC Dallas, MLS, international gear, club gear, you name it, they've got it. Use the code Third Degree at checkout. You get 20% off Soccer90.com or in store as well. They'll honor that code in person. Just tell them Third Degree sent you. Soccer90.com. They've got all the goods over there. Third Degree the Podcast was also brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm for wills, trusts, probates, and business law. Call 469-515-2559 or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you very much. I hope the hole in your roof gets patched quickly, sir.
Me too. And I hope you have safe travels.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Buzz, I hope all is well with you and the new puppy dog, Martin Paws.
Yeah, he's doing great. And I should mention that like 6 or 7 different people said hello to me last game, so it was nice to meet everybody that came out and said hello. So that was cool.
Man, that's one of my favorite things to do is go to the game with Buzz and watch all the people come up and introduce themselves to Buzz. I love that so much. It just warms my heart every time somebody comes and does that.
Well, one of the people that said hello was a guy in my section who's like, he saw you sitting over there all year. I never said anything, but I finally wanted to say something. I was like, oh. Yeah. So I figured you were tweeting or whatever. I was like, yeah.
And if you do pluck up the courage, Buzz is definitely a hugger.
Oh, yeah.
Buzz loves to be touched.
Yeah.
Fondled, some
I'm a
would say.
handshaker.
He's a snuggler.
No, stop it.
Maybe
I'm a
cups
handshaker.
and things, I don't know.
No, let's not do that.
This army of people walking up and giving just tackling Buzz and hugs.
Giving him butt pats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He loves that too. Go over there and tussle his hair. He loves that. He thinks that's the best.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, boys. Thank you very much, everybody. We will speak to you next week. FC Dallas Curious Fan on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Go and touch Buzz.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.